Hello, this is Alexia again. Today we'll be looking at Module 1A, Lesson 3. And for today's lesson, we're going to be seeing how we can take a few of the slides and import them into Nearpod. So today's lesson has to do with place value again, and students will be exploring a place value chart. As mentioned in previous slides, this file here is a view-only copy. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go File, make a copy, and again, make sure when you're saving it, in order to save it onto your drive, you're going to have to go all the way back until it says My Drive, and then it'll give you that option where you can actually save it. So in your copy of the lesson, I've already gone ahead and deleted the teacher slides, and we're going to be looking at, for me, it's slide 2 and 3 here. And the introduction is a tell me all you can activity. So students are going to read the problem stem with you. So it says the school library has 100,600 books. The town library has 10 times as many books. Tell me all you can about this situation. And students will have the opportunity here to share all they can tell you about this problem stem. So you're probably thinking, well, how am I going to do this in class? And there are a few options for you. Again, if you're just projecting this on your smartboard, you might want to have students just jot it down on Post-its, and then you can kind of group the similar ideas together. If you have devices in your classroom, then you might want to try Nearpod. Now, Nearpod is another platform that you can use, but you do need a subscription for it. So if your school has bought into it, I strongly suggest you use it. It's a great resource. So how do you get Nearpod? Here in the Google toolbar, you're going to click on add-ons, and you probably don't have it if you're not sure what Nearpod is. So you click on get add-ons, and here in the search bar, you're just going to type in Nearpod, and it's going to pop up. You'll click on the app icon and you'll click install. Because I already have it on, it says uninstall. But for you, it should say install and you'll have it right away. And it should pop up now in your add-ons. So you're going to go to Nearpod, open Nearpod, and a new toolbar is going to open here on the right-hand side. So you have a few options with Nearpod and what you can do with the slides. Probably the best one that you can use for your slides, probably just the convert to draw it. So you'll take this slide and students can actually draw on it or add a text box or add an image on it. So that'd probably be the one you probably use most when you're using Google Slides. But within Nearpod, you have a lot of other options that you can also do when creating slides through the Nearpod website. So here we're going to take this slide and I'm just going to press convert to draw it. It won't seem like much now, but once we visit the Nearpod site, you'll see what it does to this slide. Okay, so here we go. It's created the Nearpod slide where students will be able to draw. Now, I would suggest you keep the original slide. The reason is because you can write on this slide. You're not going to be able to write on the one that you've set for students to draw, and we'll see that in a little while. And I want us to also focus on this slide here. So this one has the question. So we'll go into some sample responses in a little while, but let's go ahead and convert this one as well. Now, most of these slides you're going to want to convert to draw it, but I'm just changing these two because they're the ones that we're going to focus on for today's video. Okay, so once you've edited all these slides or converted them, and you're happy with the way it looks, you're going to go to this button right here, Save and go to Nearpod. So it's going to open up Nearpod for you. It might ask you for your login information. I would suggest you sync it with your Google, your DOE Google account. So I'm just going to wait for it to save. And while we're waiting, there's a whole bunch of other already pre-made lessons, so you can go ahead and check the Nearpod library. You can filter by grade, by topic. Okay, so it's ready now, and you'll see two options, live participation and student pace. So live participation is if you're doing it live, you'll see immediate feedback from students. Student pace will be where you allow students to complete it on their own time. So you could assign something from Nearpod for homework, for example. All right, so we're going to click on live participation. And it'll just take a moment to open here. Okay, so it'll give you the options here of how to share this link with your students. So you could just click on copy link and then paste it, for example, in the Google Meet chat if you're doing it through Google Meet, or you could send it to their Google Classroom. So you'll notice here, this is my teacher view. Students will see the same thing being projected. If it's during a live participation activity, students will only be able to see the slide that you're projecting. So for example, this is slide 2. Slide 1 is just the student list, so it'll always be that. So on slide 2, they can't move ahead to slide 3. It's only until you press the little button here to go on to the next slide that students will be able to see the next slide. Now, all the Google Slides that we did not convert to Drive, you have the option to draw on it, and students will see your annotations in real time. So you'll have a few options here. You can use a pen. You can adjust the size of the pen. You have different colors. You have a highlighter tool. You could also adjust the size of the highlighter and the color. Same thing with text. You can move this text box around, and you can adjust the color and the size of the font, and then you have an eraser. So you can go in ahead and annotate these slides. Now, when we move to the slide that we were talking about, the Tell Me All You Can, you might want to, again, keep one of the original slides. So don't delete this slide just because students can't do anything with the slide. They can't write on it. And sometimes it's good for you to be able to just read the question and for students to sit back and listen without having to do anything. So again, let's take a look at this. So I would suggest you read it to students first. The school library has 100,600 books. The town library has 10 times as many books. Tell me all you can about this situation. So again, you're reading the problem set. You're telling them what they need to do. Once you've done that, then you can go ahead and open the tools by clicking on the next slide. So you'll notice this is the one that we created in the Google slide by clicking Convert to Draw It. At this point, when you click on that arrow button to move to the next slide, these slides now have the ability to give access to students to use the tool. So they'll have additional tools that we didn't have. So they'll have the pen, they'll have the highlighter, they'll have the text box, the eraser, and they'll have an additional like landscape button where they can upload images or search images through like a Google search and upload them to the slide. So they'll have that additional tool that they can use. So what are some things that we might expect students to say? They might say that the school library has 100,600 books, that the town library has 10 times as many. Maybe they might say that the town library has more than the school library. Maybe they'll say that the school library has a lot of books, right? It must be a big library there at that school. They might also say this problem is about 2 different libraries. Maybe they'll say that there is no question, and that's one of the major points about this is that there is no question here, and students instead focus on the information given and try to kind of dissect all that important information by telling all they can about these 2 sentences. And this is a great exercise for all students, but especially for your ELL students. Okay, so once students have shared or uploaded their work, you're going to see it in real time pop up here. So you'll have a whole bunch of these little squares show up, and it'll have, instead of draw a background image, it'll say all of the students' names. And you can go ahead and click on each student, and once they submit, it'll tell you that you have the ability to go ahead and share. So why don't we take a look at what it looks like when students actually share their work. Okay, so this is the student view of this slide. So if I go back here, you'll see that here is the teacher view. Now you see a student has showing up. You'll be able to see that the student hasn't done anything yet. So if I go back to the student view, I could go ahead and maybe include a text box here, and I can jot some things down. I might want to change the font here, the font color, make it maybe green. So tell me all you can. There are two libraries. The school library is 10 times less books than the town library. There are a lot of books in the school library. Okay, so maybe those are a few things that students might share. And then you'll see here on my teacher screen, now it went from black to yellow to show that it is in progress. And I can click on it and see what students are writing, even if it's in progress. And if there were more students, I could press on the arrow and view, just kind of quickly skim through all the students' responses so far. Now, when the student is happy with their response, they can submit. But I just want to also take you to the additional feature. So maybe, for example, they want to include books. It'll allow you to include books here. So a student can, it's not really necessary for this, but I'm just letting you know that that feature is available. And once the students are happy, they can submit it. And they have the option to edit their response. And you'll see that in a moment it'll load that it has been submitted. And when it's submitted, it gives you this option here to share. So all the screens, so if we go back to the student view, I now see the student's work being showcased, and that student can share the response with the rest of the class. And you remember to unshare, and then it goes back to the student view. They can then at that time also maybe edit their response if they want to make any corrections to their thinking. And again, you'll press on the cursor and you'll see that now the slide on the student view has changed. And while on my view, I can now draw and write on it. You'll see on the student view, they have no ability to do that. They do have the option to jot down some notes and save those notes via email or save to their Google Drive. They'll be able to save it to their Google Drive, okay? So now that we have the question here, we're going to want to read the problem again now with the question. So again, keeping the original slide is a good way for students just to listen and take in any information that might be important to them before they have access to the tools. So it says here the school library has 100,600 books. The town library has 10 times as many books. How many books does the town library have? And you'll see in that blue box to the right, it says show using numbers or a drawing, diagram, or explain how you got your answer. So students can then use some of those features that we spoke about. They can go ahead and use the pen and maybe show their thinking using numbers and operations. So they might do 100,000, 600 books. They might want to use the place value chart. So maybe they can search for place value chart. And we have one here, so we can insert that. Right, so they can move that over into their work, and they can then draw right on here. So you might want to use a color that kind of pops out. So we have 100,600 books, and we want to show 10 times as many. So when we multiply by 10, students might remember that that means that we're moving over to the left, right? Because we're multiplying each digit in their place value by 10 times. So they can then just use that to kind of help them figure out how many books are in the town library. So they have a lot of options here. They could just use multiplication to solve this as well, but they do have additional features like uploading images to help them. So again, the student can press submit. I can now see the student work. Just before we wrap up, I do want to go over some other features of the Nearpod. So here in the bottom, it tells you how many students are participating. You'll see a list of their names. You have some abilities to remove the student, or you can make them a co-teacher. So if you have a co-teacher, you can just allow them to have some of the access that a teacher has and not a student. And here you can scroll quickly through the slides. So if you wanted to just check on which slide you wanted to go next, you wanted to view next, you might want to use this feature. If you wanted to skip, for example, the next slide and move ahead to the next one, you can share that. It'll pop up on the student view as well. You could also hide students' names. So if you were going over sample answers, or if you're sharing your screen and you don't want students to be able to see who did what, you can hide students' names. On the top, you have here the links or the ways to kind of share this Nearpod slide. If you click on Open Whiteboard, everybody will see your whiteboard, so it'll be a blank screen. And if I go ahead and write something, it'll show up on the student view. So they'll see it right on there on the student view. You could just close it out. You could also add an activity. So if you notice that students might need some additional practice, you can go ahead and open up a drawer. So maybe what is 112? What is 10 times? And then share it. You could add an image too. Now students see that question here and they have that blank drawing space to figure that out. And then you'll just close that activity. It'll take a moment to close, and then you could proceed with your slides. Now, back in Nearpod, you'll be able to see student responses. So if you wanted to go back and maybe review what students were saying, you can go ahead and click this button here on the top left. It'll give you the option that you can resume later if you want to. And we could go see reports, student reports. So we can preview or review the reports here from the students. So I'm just going to click on reports. And here we go. I'm going to review it. And I can see here that I didn't complete all the slides. We only looked at 2 out of those slides. So we click on draw it. I can click on it and see what the student wrote. I could take a look at the next question, see what the student did, and this final question that I did not answer. So that made it at 67% participation, since I answered only 2 out of the 3 drawing slides. If you did multiplication questions, you would have to do them directly on the Nearpod, or you could create a slide in Google Slides of your own, not from the ones in Teachup. All right, well, that brings us to the end of today's video segment. I hope you found this tutorial on how to make these Teachup lessons into Nearpod slides, and I'll see you next time. Bye.